Today's show brought to you by redcon1.com. That's right. Click the link at the bottom of the podcast app in which you are listening to this on. Check them out. Use promo code T20 Quartermiss. That's right. redcon1.com.
There's nothing special about being American. None of you can define for me what an American is.
I am the nation. I was born on July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence is my birth certificate. The bloodlines of the world run in my veins because I offered freedom to the oppressed. I am many things and many people. I am the nation. I am 200 million living souls and the ghost of millions who have lived and died for me. I am Nathan Hale and Paul Revere. I stood at Lexington and fired the shot heard round the world. I'm Washington, Jefferson, Patrick Henry. I'm John Paul Jones, the Green Mountain Boys, Davy Crockett. I'm Lee.
Coming to you from the DTOM Studios in the free state of Florida, sponsored by Maker's Mark Bourbon, this is Don't Tread on Merica. How's everybody doing out there today? It is Friday, November 27, 2025. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and you're not too full. You're not spending on your money at the mall, or people even do that anymore? I don't know. You know where you could spend some money, though, if you wanted to? The DTOM Store. Help a small business out, right? I don't even take the money. Profits go to charity. I give them to Tunnels and Towers, so don't even worry about that. Just get some swag. Guys, we got a good show today. I got a special guest. We're going to do an interview. His gentleman's name is Mr. Marc Defant. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. But first, a couple of things. Make sure whatever podcast app you're listening to this on, that you are following the show, that you are subscribed, whatever that button is there. There's no charge. It's free. There's no Patreon. I don't do any of that crap. Just follow the show. I am currently working on a new situation to try and get the videos out. I can't recall the name of the website, so I don't want to give it to you right now. I'm a moron and I have forgotten. So as soon as I get that, if you know what, if you want to know, go to the Facebook page show and follow the show on social media. Don't Tread on America on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, and TikTok. And of course on the Twitter X Machine DTOM Podcast 1776. And from there, you can see what the website is. You can click on it and follow the show there. I can't remember the name of it. I was doing it at 2 o'clock this morning as I was at work. All right. Also, guys, make sure you follow the website, DontTreadonMerica.com. And if you want to email me, I have any questions, you have any questions about today's show and the guest that's on here, please email me, DonQ at DontTreadonMerica.com. But right now, we're going to get things going with a little bit of Damn Yankees. Don't Tread on Merica version. Let me get this party started on a Friday. Courtesy of one Ted Theodore Nugent. If you know the words, sing along. If you don't, sing along anyway. Gonna crank it up, rip the knob off. While you guys are out there shopping, while the wives are shopping, you can be listening to this right now. You guys ready? All right, let's rock and roll. Come on.
But you better not set your sights on me.
Merica. Come on, sing along. Let's go. Come on. Merica. All right, guys. Welcome to Don't Tread on Merica, the show where we're really starting to pop a little bit, guys. Of course, I am your host, Donq, and today on the show, we're having a gentleman. His name is Marc Defant. He is a tenured professor of genealogy and geochemistry at the University of South Florida, where he has been based for much of his career. He has a PhD from FSU, I'll let that slide, and initially worked as a consulting geologist for companies like Schlumberger Well Services, De Beers, Placer Dome, and Anglo American on projects involving diamonds and golds in regions such as West Africa and Russia. His academic research has centered on geochemistry and volcanic rocks, mantle processes, and the origins of continental crust, with extensive fieldwork in locations including Russia, I can't even say that word, Costa Rica, Greece, Indonesia, and the Lesser Antilles, Panama, and the Philippines. Defant has secured grants from organizations like the National Science Foundation, National Geographic, and the American Chemistry Society, also the National Academy of Sciences. He has published extensively in top journals such as Nature and has over 19,000 citations on Google Scholar. He has served as an editor of geology and associate editor of the Journal of Geophysical Research. Delivered invited talks at institutions like MIT, Columbia University, and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and was a keynote speaker at a Chinese government symposium on continental crust. In recent years, Defant's interests have shifted towards broader topics, including societal misuses or misunderstandings of science. He authored a book, Voyage of Discovery from the Big Bang to the Ice Age. He has written articles for outlets like Skeptic, Free Inquiry, Popular Science, and Apora magazine on subjects such as gender dynamics, evolutionary biology, and AI. He's given TED Talks titled Why We Are Alone in the Galaxy. He has also appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Student reviews on Rate My Professor describe him as knowledgeable but challenging, with a 3.2 out of 5 difficulty rating based on over 120 evaluations. Regarding his recent peer-reviewed paper, Evolutionary Psychology and the Crisis of Empirical Rigor in Feminist Studies, it was authored solely by Defant and published online just a couple of weeks ago, November 4th of 25, in the Journal of Sexuality Culture. The abstract critiques core feminist tenets such as patriocracy, social constructivism, fat studies, rape, ecofeminism, and lived experiences all lacked empirical support and being more ideologically driven and scientifically grounded, using evolutionary psychology as a framework. Let me get some other music on here. Defant reframes patriarchy not as a deliberate male-dominated power structure, but as a emergent result of evolutionary pressures related to reproduction and resource allocation. He challenges fat studies for ignoring biological and medical evidence on obesity, arguing that human preferences for body types stem from adaptive evolutionary traits tied to health and fertility. God bless it, Don. Learn how to fucking talk. On rape, he disputes feminine views that is solely about power, proposing instead that it can be understood and maladaptive reproductive strategy, and warns that overlooking this dimension limits explanatory powers. The paper's methodology involves critical analysts intriguing evolutionary perspectives on topics like adaptive traits, reproductive, and health without primary data collection or experiments. Defant concludes that feminist studies influenced by Marxist and postmodernist ideas have prioritized advocacy over empirical rigor, suggesting it functions better as a political platform than a academic discipline, and that gender behavior research should shift to fields with stricter standards. This paper builds on Defant's other 2025 work, including Evolutionary Basis of Gender Dynamics, Understanding the Patriarchy and Pay Gap, and the Glass Ceilings. It has sparked discussions on platforms like X, where Defant was featured in a live interview just the other day, the Battlefront Broadcasting Network, hosted by Dustin Faulkner, challenging feminist ideals through evolutionary psychology, biology, and neuroscience. Earlier, a post referenced his related articles on the biological basis of gender roles, noting his background in geology while venturing into these interdisciplinary critics. So, that's basically the synopsis on Professor Marc Defant. All right, guys, so I have Professor Marc Defant here with me. Professor, how's it going today?
Fine, thanks. How about you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah, looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah. So, what brings you my way? I know you wrote a paper, and the name of the paper is Evolutionary Psychology and the Crisis of Empirical Rigor in Feminist Studies. So...
It's a big full of mush there, but trying to appeal to the people in the scholarly area.
Right.
I want to talk more about, what the meaning is.
Oh, yeah. So, as a tenured professor of geology and geochemistry at the University of South Florida, your primary expertise lies in volcanic rocks, mantle processes, and the origins of continental crust, with over 19,000 citations and publications in journals like Nature. What drew you, as a hard scientist in physical science, to pivot towards interdisciplinary topics like evolutionary psychology, gender dynamics, and critiquing feminist studies?
Wow. I didn't realize I had 19,000 citations, but...
Yeah, that's what it said online, so...
I guess it is kind of interesting, and I'm kind of strange for that. I mean, most people don't switch like I have. For the first part of my career, and still today, I keep my hands in it. I did research on volcanoes, so I've been on a lot of the volcanoes throughout the world, collecting samples. And I'd bring back those samples and analyze them for their geochemistry, and then study the processes that are taking place within the Earth. That could tell us a lot about how the continents evolved and so on. But then in the 1990s, I started teaching a course in the honors program, science honors, and I started delving into evolutionary psychology because I thought it was fascinating then, and I still think it's fascinating. I've always wondered why people behave the way they do, and in particular the way men and women behave towards one another. And I discovered that this world of evolutionary psychology could really explain a lot about behavior. But I also noticed at the same time that feminism and the studies that were going on in feminism were totally ignoring evolutionary psychology and even criticizing it as somehow bad for feminist studies. Well, I would argue that even if it was bad, it shouldn't be ignored because it is based on factual reality, because those studies are being done on real data and in real life. So I guess that's how I got started, and I've been now doing serious research in evolutionary psychology with several papers published already. And that even takes me into the gender differences and all that. So
I was just curious because I was thinking about this while you were on the other podcast. Was how long have you been at USF as a professor?
Since 1983.
Okay, so
been there a long time.
42 years.
Yeah.
How much pushback have you gotten in the academic region doing something like this? Because, I know, college, universities, and the way a lot of those individuals are, I was just curious. That was something that popped in my head when you were talking to the other gentleman.
Well, I'm actually quite curious about that too. I'm kind of keeping my head down a little bit because I'm not sure what the reaction is going to be, but so far it hasn't been bad. I've caught some grief from some of the one in particular feminist on campus. She's actually trans, and I expect some more. The paper hasn't been out that long, so
right, it's just been a couple of weeks.
We'll have to wait and see. I do have another paper out that pretty much got ignored by the feminist movement. I'm not sure this one will because it addresses them directly. But in my other paper, I was talking about the pay gap primarily and the glass ceiling and those kind of things.
Right. Yeah.
Women. So
when did you become interested in this? I mean, I know you just wrote the paper. It was just published, I think November 5th. Obviously, you've had this on your mind for quite some time, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Well, this particular topic has just taken place over the last 5 years, I guess, 6 years, where I got interested in how feminist studies, they weren't looking at the data or they were ignoring the data. I feel like, and maybe this is too political, but I feel like sometimes that the feminists or those people in feminist studies, they tend to they only want to hear from people in their area. Mm-hmm. So it would be like if a geochemist, only got opinions from certain groups of people and ignored everyone else. And right. That's what I sometimes think. They're not listening to what people are doing in the sciences like evolutionary psychology and biology. And as a consequence, they really get themselves in a pickle because it wasn't that hard to find fault with their studies and to point out where they lack discipline in rigorous studies. I'm not saying that all feminist studies lack rigor. I'm just saying that I could find a lot of studies that were lacking rigor. The fatness studies, this idea of objectification, the evolutionary psychology, and a couple of things like rape and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I wish that feminist studies would get more rigorous, but if they can't, I would argue that they shouldn't be on a college campus.
That's more of a selective. I mean, it definitely shouldn't be, especially in a public school. I mean, USF's a publicly right. funded school. I mean, as far as getting political, by all means, this is a very political show, so you're not going to hurt my feelings at all. What I mean is, and I don't want to hurt the feelings of women out there, but I do want to. I believe and I hope that we have a neutral attitude in the academy, and we're open to discussion,
to all things. And when I start hearing opinions being generated without much data to back them up, I worry about the students that are learning from those people. Mm-hmm. If it's just going to be opinions, then anybody can have an opinion, but to have a rich opinion which is factually based, that's another whole story. And I think that's what we're all about. At least my experience as a research scientist has taught me that's how we should behave. That if we make or have a conclusion about something, that it should be deeply studied and factually based. And I'll tell you, in the sciences, if I went into a meeting and said, "Oh, it's my opinion that this is true," well, I'd get eaten alive. Right. You can just imagine how they would be. Oh. If I said, "I think this volcano is going to erupt tomorrow," the first thing they'd do is say, "Well, what makes you think that?" And then I better have some good reasons for doing it or saying that, or I'll be crucified, so to speak.
Right.
And the fact is that no one seems to be making those kind of arguments in feminist studies. And it was that idea in particular that they were criticizing evolutionary psychology, which I've known about since the early 70s, it was that really kind of got me upset about this whole thing.
Well, it's almost like nowadays you can't even have that argument because people feel like it's, like you talked about, the feminist on campus was a trans. It's like we're just automatically supposed to accept that as the norm. And like my wife, she sees this stuff. She's not a feminist in that sense. I mean, she feels like everyone's equal in that sense, man, woman. But when you have these other situations, it drives us crazy, especially like in sports nowadays, or these past, few years. I actually read an article this morning. There was a women's weightlifting competition just the other day, and the winner was a trans woman who won first place. Subsequently, they pulled the first place title from her and gave it to the second place woman, which I feel is fair, because in my personal opinion, I don't feel men, no matter how they want to describe themselves, don't belong in women's sports. I was just, it's almost like a body, dysmorphia type situation where people can't figure out where they fit in, so they just identify some certain way.
Yeah. By the way, cut me off if I'm talking too long, because I'm
fine.
not sure where your
you're fine.
Listeners are. But yeah, you're right. It's gotten so bizarre on campus and in general society. I mean, maybe it's because I'm gotten old and crotchety, but I feel like sometimes I just can't believe that they want us to believe that male and female genders are the same. And even using the term gender, it used to, back in the 60s, it used to refer to the positive or feminine and masculine articles and things like that in other languages like lure and law. But now it's gotten to mean almost anything, the behavior or the whatever, or even the sex part of it. But I see now gender is the way people behave. And of course, that's generated by, I think anyway, our hormones. And like testosterone, men have, 10 times more testosterone than women. And yet women wonder why, sometimes we're violent. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with testosterone. Are we to be punished? Well, not unless we're violent. We shouldn't be. So masculine has a lot of good characteristics to it. It's not all toxic. And those good characteristics are the things that women chose for back in hunter-gatherer societies. So one might argue that we're the way we behave today because we've spent hundreds of thousands of years being selected for by women who wanted men to be that way.
Yeah,
and that's my general argument in the paper, is that this so-called patriarchy that women constantly talk about really is due to choice made by women and not due to men getting together and trying to oppress women, as we constantly hear, not only just in feminist studies, but I hear Hillary Clinton and a whole mass of women saying this, and constantly referring to the gender pay gap as evidence of it. Well, I don't guess they never thought to go and look up women who have researched economics and found that the gender pay gap is not due to men discriminating against women. It might have been that way, 40 years ago, but today we have a gender pay gap because women are choosing to be in particular types of jobs, some of which don't pay equal to men, and in jobs where they want to raise children and it keeps them away from their jobs, and so they don't make as much money as men. And they tend not to, they're risk averse, so they tend not to get into jobs where where they're going to be competing intensely and having to work 60, 70 hours a week, whereas men tend to gravitate towards those kinds of jobs
Right.
because they offer high salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Women like jobs which can be moved from one place to another, like a dentist, or a doctor or a nurse. They can move from one town to another if they have to. If they're, for example, if their husband gets a job in another city, it's generally the woman that changes her job so that the male can make more money. Now that doesn't mean that all women should get jobs so they can follow their husbands around, but it does suggest that women are giving up high-paying jobs for things they deem more enticing or more important to them. Men tend to put the importance of their job much higher than women, and as a result, we have variations in our society on that, and it's reflected in the gender pay gap. So my argument is, and not only that, but the economists that I've read, their argument too, like I'm trying to think of Claudia Golden at Harvard, who's an outstanding economist. She finds that that the differences between men and women in the pay gap is due primarily to women wanting to take care of their kids, but there are other reasons, which I mentioned too, which ends up to be this differences in pay. And just to emphasize, it's not due to men getting together and trying to oppress women.
No, it's been my experience in life that most of your average jobs out there that you don't necessarily need a degree for has nothing to do with whether it's a man or a woman. It has more to do with time with the company, how hard you work at the job, how many hours you put in doing the job. Like where I work, it's a tenured base pay scale. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It just depends on how long you've been there. And then also how much you put into the job while you're there. And it just kind of is what it is. But, yeah, I mean, I always was curious about the pay scale thing. I don't see many doctors, male or female. You might have a male that makes more than a female doctor, and they may do the same, same type of work. However, the man doctor could have been doing it for 10 more years or whatever. And then I'm sure subsequently there's plenty of female doctors that make more than male doctors, and it's a tenured based situation. I feel in that thing. It's not because Dr. Jim is a man and the Dr. Jill isn't. He's going to make $20,000 more a year.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. In general, when men and women do the same job, they are paid the same. Mm-hmm. But women tend to go into jobs that are very different than the jobs men go into. For example, men tend to go into construction type jobs where manual labor is emphasized. Women tend to go into caring type jobs, social related jobs, nursing, education where they're with children, or social workers, for example. Men tend to get into like I said, those very competitive jobs, and the reason for that is that men from time immemorial have been competing against other men. Men tend not to compete against women. So we've set up a kind of a strange thing in our society where now we've got men and women competing in the job market for various jobs, and it's something that I don't think either gender or sex is used to. Men are used to competing against men, and it's been kind of an awakening for a lot of men over the last 40 years or so that they're being thrown into an environment where they have to compete with women. I don't say that's bad. I don't make any moral judgments about that. I just say it's different than it used to be, and I think it's taken a little bit of time to get used to. And I think some of the things that women have had to set us straight on are the mistreatment of women in the job market. And those are all good things generated, I think, by the women's movement. You don't want somebody harassing your wife or girlfriend or whatever when they're working on the job.
Right.
And so that's good that it's been pointed out. And I think men have learned from that or are still learning.
Right.
But those differences in interests don't get thought about much by feminists. but there are real interests. If you want to know why nobody's going into computer science, it's because women don't choose to go into computer science. It's not because men are trying to keep women out of computer science, and that's a big difference. We get blamed for a lot of things, so let's cut down on some of it that we can clearly show we don't deserve blame for, and move on.
Right.
So what do I want to say? I want to say that we should start waking men up to the fact that there's a lot of anger out there. Some of it deserved, some of it not deserved, and we should start telling young men that they shouldn't tolerate derogatory kinds of attitudes out there. We have a lot of fine young men in this country, and they deserve equal chances. I don't want to see them get discriminated any more than I want to see women get discriminated against.
Right. So I wanted to ask, given your background in evidence-based fields like geochemistry, where hypotheses are tested against data from fieldwork in places like, I think I had this right, that you worked in Kamchatka, Russia. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And and Indonesia. How do you
in Indonesia? Yes.
How do you see the crisis of empirical rigor in feminist studies manifesting?
Good question. It might take me a little bit of background information for me to answer that question carefully. How do I see it manifested? Well, one of the ways I've already mentioned, and that is that it seems to be very opinion based, and coming from a research perspective, I mean, we hardly ever dwell on opinions. A hypothesis is a little bit different than an opinion. It's, if we're using Occam's razor, which tells us to use the simplest explanation to describe or have a hypothesis about how something formed, we're gonna put out a hypothesis that fits all the data, but be willing, if there's a better hypothesis out there with new data that's collected, that we're willing to switch to that. And a good example would be how the dinosaurs died off. For years, we thought it might be due to climate change, but nobody really knew. So there were hundreds of hypotheses out there about how the dinosaurs died, very few of which looked like reality. But then there was a discovery made in about 1984, maybe it was 83, that showed that there was a meteorite that struck Earth 66 million years ago, and that's what killed off the dinosaurs, along with a whole lot of other animals, and it led to the rise of mammals. My point being that we had hypotheses that were based on data, but there was a better hypothesis that came along, and I think we're getting closer to the truth all the time. I think it would be very, very surprising if the hypothesis that the dinosaurs died off by a meteorite were overthrown. So I'm not trying to say that we live in paradigm shifts. We don't. I don't think. I think there is something as truth, and I think science is getting closer and closer to the truth all the time. So I don't know. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah.
Would you? Okay.
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, that's.
So
it's manifest as opinions, I guess the summary there.
Right. It's not fact based. It's more opinion based.
Yes.
As far as that. So
if you're teaching students, you don't want them to be teaching opinions necessarily.
You want to teach them fact, right?
You can teach them opinions if you have some opinions, but hey, let's try to get to the science part too.
Right.
Excuse me, I interrupted.
No, you're fine. Was there a specific book or event or cultural debate that motivated you to write this paper as an outsider to the field?
Well, yeah, I think so. And I've just been seeing so much crazy stuff going on. I'll give you an example. A lot of schools are now getting rid of their SAT scores and letting students in on the basis of other things. and that seems to me to be insane. I think sometimes we forget that life is competition, and that we're in competition with other countries. And those countries, if they get stronger than us, not being a good democratic societies, they may come and take us over. So I worry about places like China getting to be bigger and better than us, because believe me, they are not worrying about, whether there's a gender pay gap. They're not worrying about, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about those things. I think we should, but we should worry about them if they're due to men impressing women. But China is focused on the best and generating the best and merit. And we, on the other hand, seem to be getting farther and farther away from merit. And I think this is due to the general makeup of women. They are more caring than men, more sensitive than men. And their feelings play much more into their decision making. And as a result of that, I think we're seeing a lot of this wokeism due to their decision making and their input into society. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying that I've got a daughter and I've got two sons, and I want those two sons to have as many opportunities as my daughter does. Mm-hmm. And I think my sons and daughter function on merit. They're not going to back away from meritorious decision making. And why shouldn't we? I think you can argue that, there are all kinds of reasons why a person may or may not be able to compete for a job, but there are a lot of reasons why they can compete for a job. And ultimately, it's like science. Either you get it right or you don't get it right. So either you can do the job or you can't do the job. Mm-hmm. And if you can do the job better than anybody else can do the job, why not have them do it? You don't see the NFL deciding, or the NBA deciding that somebody, because they had a bad rap when they were younger, not getting into the NBA, them letting them into the NBA over our superstars.
Right.
So it just seems like common sense that we're ignoring today. Your idea about gender, trans and all that, seems crazy.
I think it's a basic idea of no matter what the job is, whether it's the highest level, being a doctor or an airplane pilot, being a sports star, or being in the military, you want the best person for that job, whatever that job is. It doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman, as long as they're the best at it.
No kidding.
And one of the things that killed me is, like, in the military now, they have different standards for men and women to pass just your basic physical requirements to, do however many push-ups or run the mile and so fast or whatever. And it's like, the war isn't going to stop because that's a female out there instead, so let's give her a break. If you're going up against the enemy, they're going to kill you just as equally.
Well, I fear men too may try to protect women. After all, we've been selected for 300,000 years or more to protect women by women. So it would be fairly natural for men out on a battlefield to tend to protect the women they're around.
And not focus on the job.
All men try to, I think, protect each other when they're out there too. So maybe it wouldn't be too much different, but I don't want to be watching my back out on a battlefield. And I think there's a concern out there that men would have to be doing that if women fought. I guess we'll have to work that one out, but I picked up on what you said, and that is, you want to be around the best guys you can be around if you're out there with your life on the line.
Right.
And, it's like Musk said. Musk, you don't want to fly in a plane where that jet's, being flown by somebody that's incompetent. It's kind of important when your life is at stake. Mm-hmm. It might be okay for the social worker not to be the best, but it's a whole nother story for your pilot not to be the best, or your doctor, or your lawyer,
or even firefighters or police officers.
Well, definitely. Definitely. Well, the guy that builds my house, I want him to be the best.
Right.
Or certainly be able to hammer wood,
Exactly.
Or hammer nails into wood.
So,
and we all have different abilities. I couldn't build this house if my life depended on it. So yeah, we have to be good in what we're good at,
Right. In your paper, you suggested that feminist studies have been influenced by Marxist and postmodernist ideas, prioritizing advocacy over objective inquiry, and that it might function better as a political platform than an academic discipline. As someone who has also written for outlets like Apora Magazine and Skeptic on similar themes, like the biological basis of gender roles or pay gap, what personal or professional experiences led you to conclude that evolutionary biology and psychology offer more robust framework for understanding these issues?
Well, you did your homework. Good question. What was the first part that you said? It made me think of something. The first part of that question.
We're prioritizing advocacy over objective inquiry, that it might function better as a political platform than an academic.
Oh, yeah,
discipline.
that was it. Yeah. Yeah, that's been my biggest, one of my big complaints. I see the feminist movement as functioning as a political movement. And our universities should not be, in my opinion, be pushing for one political platform or another. Yes, they're part of their pushing is to get equality for women. But, you know, the way I see it, women have gotten equality and then some. I mean, we have now more faculty that are women. We have more doctors and lawyers that are women. Our judges are becoming more filled with women than men. So we're getting there if we haven't already gotten there.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want us thinking about is not political things. I want us to be thinking about traditional intellectual pursuits, the sciences, engineering, STEM, French literature in the 15th century or whatever. But things that have some data behind them. You know, we can talk about history and all kinds of data that tells us that that's a history, or we can talk about opinions in literature, but, you know, have some sort of way to judge those opinions as to what they are, whether they're good or bad. So, yeah, my whole stance is take the platform elsewhere. You know, in fact, I'm horrified sometimes to see my colleagues running around with pins for this president or that president or, you know, whatever. I think that the universities should, you know, be much more open to any kind of viewpoint. But I tell you, they're not. No, they're open only to a leftist viewpoint for the most part. And if you're not leftist, boy, you're going to get cut down.
Right. And I feel even in elementary school and into high school, it's the same thing. There's too much I'm for this person or this person, and then God forbid a student comes in and they're not for that person, and it's a whole thing. And I feel like teachers, I feel everybody is able to have their own opinion on whoever, but it should be your personal opinion, not your professional opinion as far as your work, unless your work involves that topic. You know, if you're a teacher teaching kids, especially in elementary school or even high school, these kids don't even vote. It's not even, you know, they're just mirrors of their parents. So it doesn't really matter, you know, what you're trying to influence these kids with.
Well, I would say that what you're seeing in the high schools and grade schools today, with all this wokeism and everything, is a direct result of men and women being influenced by feminist thought. They're coming out of the universities. They're going into our educational systems, and they are pushing these Marxist ideologies. And my thinking is that it's having a terrible impact in general on society, where we're, you know, we'd already talked about the merit part of it, but where we do some crazy things like the trans movement, or like dropping SAT and ACT scores, which are a measurement of intelligence. I mean, if there's one thing that psychology is very, very good at, it's intelligence and understanding intelligence. They've been working on it for 150 years. And yet that's another thing that I see being denied out there, is that we can measure intelligence properly. And I would argue that we have to be careful with this impact. It's okay to have feelings, but when those feelings start getting us to suppress other opinions, then I think we've got to rethink it. Women tend not to be open towards new opinions, according to recent surveys. I'm just looking at the paper right now. Corey Clark has done a wonderful paper. It's in the Journal of Controversial Ideas. It just came out, and she's showing that opinions by women are very, very different than opinions of men. Men tend to be very open to free speech. Women tend not to be. Women tend to cancel much quicker than men. And unfortunately, we have a lot of men that tend now to realize that the power is with women in universities. And so they're much more willing to go along with the opinions of women than men. And you can see then this snowball effect that we see in the institutions where we've gotten now, everybody in the institution is on the same page, really. And when you get a guy like me coming in, well, I'm the guy that they want to cancel usually.
Right.
And that's been made on me in the past. And I still think that we should have open discourse in universities, not be shouting people down because they have different opinions.
Yeah. Well, what was the old saying that, I say it still. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth, but we can agree to disagree. Everyone is entitled to have a difference of opinion and to be able to have a discussion. So something that just clicked in my head on I don't recall the guy's podcast, so I don't mean to be disrespectful, but his name's Dustin. You guys talked about I believe you got into nutrition, as far as is there a situation possibly that there are a group of men in this country who lean more feminist in that situation? Do you think anything could have to do with what's being put in our food, our water, our daily diets that everyone eats, but soy-based type things that could possibly increase the estrogen in a man to make them feel that way?
Well, I don't know a lot about nutrition,
right.
So I just admit that up front.
Right.
But I don't see anything out there to suggest that there's any kind of thing going on which would try to make men more feminine, other than power in the universities.
Okay, so more of an ideal type thing.
And I don't know that they're more feminine. They just agree more with the feminist point of view. And I've seen that get worse and worse over the years. I'm not sure worse is the right word, but it certainly has changed. And men tend to be agreeing now with most of the things that are said in the university, as opposed to the way it used to be. Men would stand up for themselves more, and I see men being kind of bullied. In my career anyway, I've seen a lot of men bullied in meetings, and I used to do a lot of work on committees in the university, and I watched a lot of men get bullied in those committees. It might be, just a look, it might be something they say, but they will grovel once called out, which I just don't understand that.
Yeah. It's almost like they're afraid to have a difference of opinion for like a popularity contest type situation.
It is. Well, and also I can understand to some extent they're going to get fired if they're not watching. Mm-hmm. A lot of men have been fired from their jobs because they crossed the feminist movement. Mm-hmm. So, I have the support, I believe, of the administration. And so I mean, they've made it very clear to me that I can speak my mind on these issues, which I'm publishing on.
Right.
And so I am. But if I didn't have that, I don't know, maybe I'd be groveling a little bit too.
So how does this paper fit into your broader mission of addressing societal misunderstandings of science? And why do you think it's important for scientists like yourself to weigh in on social sciences that you argued have veered off course?
Ooh, good question. I love that topic. I've written for Skeptic Magazine quite a bit over the years, and so I'm not. How should I say this? I'm not targeting feminists per se. Any group or individual that touts anything over the science is going to potentially come under criticism by me. I'm fairly consistent about that. And we mentioned Graham Hancock before, but I was very critical of Graham because he's expounding on a lot of things that I think are not based in science, just his opinions about things. And so I have a paper right now with Skeptic about climate and how I think we're terribly overreacting to climate. I used to work for Shell Oil, so maybe I'm too opinionated on this, and it's my background that's influenced me. But oil is our bread and butter, and if we cut back on oil and destroy our economy because we're trying to keep from this global warming nonsense, it's very scary to me. I don't think people realize how, if you start reading the literature, how speculative climate change is. And I know I'll be clobbered for that one, but because that's not something you want to say in the universities. But I think before we start destroying our economy and cutting back on, look at California and the costs of their gasoline, because they shut down oil everywhere you can think of. And Biden was trying to do it to the entire country. So I wrote an article I've written a couple articles for Skeptic and I've got one with him right now, trying to explain that we may really be hurting ourselves. China's not, they're saying that they're going to get serious about climate change and all this. And they are building nuclear power plants, which will help. But they're also throwing up coal plants as fast as they can, claiming that, well, we had our industrial revolution, now they deserve theirs. Well, that's not going to cut it if the planet is in serious problems. But my point is that since China isn't all too worried about this, maybe we shouldn't be either, not because it's a threat, but because I think we have more hysteria here in the United States than China does. This seems to be more of a feelings kind of issue than something based on evidence. We simply cannot handle. How do I want to say this? We can't handle the increase that's going to happen in our society due to AI with this infrastructure that we have right now. It just can't happen. And so we're going to have to put billions of dollars into infrastructure to keep us satisfied energy wise in this country. And we're certainly not going to make those changes with clean energy. It's shown what we only have. I think when I did my article, it was about 8% clean energy in this country. And our impact on clean energy or on the global warming in general is just minuscule compared to other countries. The poorest countries in the world are the biggest polluters of the environment in terms of CO2 and methane. So we're kind of being punished for the output. We've come down drastically. We're the biggest country in the world to cut back on our carbon dioxide and methane, but it's hardly had any impact at all because poorer nations are putting out so much. And now they're demanding that we pay them to cut back. So I can see why they're saying that. Why should they cut back and be poor for the rest of their, history? Then we should be. So I don't know. Do we want to send all our money to these countries over the possibility that we may be right on this global warming?
Well, and I'm not an expert in this by any stretch of the imagination, but I could have sworn I've heard different professors and doctors and people that are way smarter than I say that the Earth constantly goes through these climate change events through the history of the Earth. So, I mean, who's to say that what these people say is climate change because of carbon, poisoning or whatever, that it's not just the turn in the next cycle of that?
Yeah, I can tell you've been reading on this. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The climate change is to some extent speculative. Remember, we're using computer models to predict what the temperature will be like in the year 2050 and in the year 2100. So when you're speculating, I mean, it's hard to predict the weather out for 7 days, much less the climate 50 years from now or 25 years from now. So we got to come into this with a little bit of caution. It seems to me that there's a push right now to destroy the oil industry, to get us off of oil. And if we go off oil too fast, it will have serious consequences, because I know Russia and India are not going off of oil anytime soon. And you can sign all the Paris Accords you want. They're not going to do it.
Right.
And so, and look at how much they've changed. They haven't changed at all since the Paris Accord was signed.
They've grown.
Yes, absolutely.
And, America is a fraction of the population of India or China. But like you said, as a country, we seem to be the focal point of the world when it comes to this situation, when you're talking, over 2 billion people between those two countries. And how many coal-fired plants and whatnot do they have per person in that, with their population versus what we have? I mean, where I live here in Florida, the electric company that does ours, it's a city-based electric, got rid of their coal-fired plant, and now it's natural gas. And the price of electricity has gone up, and I actually went ahead and put solar on my house just to offset the difference of the price. The
government's going to pay a lot for it.
Yeah,
why not?
I mean, I got a good kickback from it. I have a Tesla battery, so I have, if I lose power, I have power. So, that was kind of a selling point for my wife, but it wasn't because I'm a green activist, whatever. It was more of like, okay, well, I could see the cost of fuel constantly going up, from a natural gas standpoint. I was like, well, the solar is going to offset that immensely. And they buy electricity from me. So it's like, okay, cool.
Well, gas and oil, though, have been going up, not because we're not producing enough. It's been going up because we're cutting back now, when Trump came in office, we've increased our oil and gas production. But it was going up under the Biden administration because he was preventing drilling and he was preventing the production of oil and gas. And there's nothing to take its place. If they could have come in with clean energy and said, okay, we're going to replace all this with clean, but they're not. Their clean energy isn't doing what we were told it should do, and our infrastructure wouldn't handle it anyway.
Right.
When you have everybody driving electric cars, which is what Biden and Newsom claimed we should be doing. Well, the infrastructure for you to go home and charge your battery every day or every night so you can get to work the next day would be catastrophic on our infrastructure. So, but they didn't build up the infrastructure. They just said we've got to start, getting on this electrical kick, and all the new green energy that you're going to add needs to have an infrastructure to carry that electricity throughout the country. We're already having burnouts, and they're going dark in California.
Yeah. And no, I was going to say, you need to be able to produce the electricity to electrify these cars. It's one of those situations where it was like, well, I have an electric car. Well, how do you think they produce that electricity to make your car, or to, for you to power your car?
Sometimes people forget that. I've heard these climate activists scream those kinds of things without the thought that we might have to develop an infrastructure, or that we should all be on electric cars tomorrow. Well, okay, that's great. How's everybody gonna get their car charged? Mm-hmm. Just kind of amazes me. I'd like to see us go. I like electric vehicles, but unless we can charge them somehow, it's going to be pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm a staunch offender of gas, because I have 2 Jeeps and a Mustang, so I don't save any kind of gas.
Well, I do feel sorry for countries that are poor, and they're having to burn coal. They've got a large poor population. I can understand where they would be destitute and don't want to get rid of their coal power plant. My suggestion is that we try to develop electrical and clean energy slowly, but at the same time, allow those countries to survive. I don't see how we're going to be able to afford to get in there and support them so they can get on clean energy as fast as we can.
It very well could be a situation, and you kind of touched on this, but if you focus on India and China, for example, like you just said, very poor countries in the broad spectrum of things, the history of our country and how we built up America, how it is using coal-fired plants and stuff for the last 100 years, would countries like India and China looked at our history and says, we want that same thing, and that's how they did it, so we're doing the same thing, because it's something that they can build quickly to increase their infrastructure and build whatever they're going to build.
Yes, and my only argument is, can it be done? I don't think we have the evidence that it can be done. In fact, one of the things that I see happening now is a lot of clean energy is poo-pooed. I see the environmentalists out there complaining about, well, I feel like I'm an environmentalist too, but we all care about the environment, don't we? But I don't think we should get crazy like the windmills. Yeah, they're now, they kill millions of birds every year. Mm-hmm. And so the environmentalists are coming aware of that, and now they're raising hell about the wind turbines, and they're also complaining about the noise they make and the problems of what do they call it when you've got vision problems out there, you don't like the sights, right, because you've got all those turbines out at sea. Mm-hmm. So they're complaining about those things now too. So I don't know what we're going to do about clean energy when people are complaining about clean energy. The solar farms take up a lot. Oh yeah,
that's what I was going to bring up. Like here in Polk County, it's like you drive down 27 or 60, and those used to be nothing but orange groves, and now it's just mass solar panel fields essentially. Tico run or whatever, and it's like, I guess that makes more money for whoever than producing oranges did. I don't know.
Yeah, right. No kidding. I wish we were still producing oranges.
Yeah. Now it's houses in
Florida's messed up.
Houses and solar farms.
Yep, for sure.
So critics might say that as a geologist, you're stepping outside your lane by critiquing feminist scholarships. How would you respond to that, and what research process did you undertake to ensure your arguments in the paper were well supported by evidence from evolutionary psychology, biology, and neuroscience?
Well, as always in science, if what I said is wrong, it'll be easy to refute me.
Right.
And so I'm saying bring it on. Mm-hmm. And I don't say that arrogantly. I just mean, look, I'm pretty confident that I got it right. And I'm a careful scientist. And so what do I want to tell you? I guess I've already caught hell because I'm a geologist, mm-hmm, and I'm trying to discuss evolutionary psychology. But at the same time, I think that I'm using the facts as my basis. I'm not going out there and giving my opinions on this. I'm giving factual information. We haven't gotten into much of that today. Maybe I could come back and talk to you later on about the details in case your audience is interested. But there is a lot of data to back up what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also been doing evolution now, evolutionary psychology, dabbling in it for 30 years. Even while I was doing geochemical research,
Right.
I was, teaching this and working on it. So I've read extensively, and the literature is what anybody needs to be up on. And I'm pretty up on the literature.
Well, I feel like a lot of people's arguments would be, and not just for you, but just for me, for example, is like the job I do and the things I say, it's kind of like I get looked at like, well, you're just Don. What do you know? So it's like I would feel like some people, their argument to counter argue you would be, well, you're just a geologist. What do you know about this type thing? And you're saying, I've got the science.
Yeah, and my argument to counter the argument is that I stand by what I say, and if I'm wrong, prove I'm wrong.
Right.
That's what science does. Nobody can stand on opinions; they have to stand on the facts. And if they want to have a discussion where they bring facts to the table to argue against me, then I'm happy to do that. And it shouldn't matter whether I'm a man or woman or a geochemist or whatever. If I have command of factual information and I can show you that I'm right on this issue factually, then my argument should stand.
Right.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand. So
yeah, they've come at me already on that.
Yeah.
I saw a woman commenting on one of my podcasts that I've been on, claiming, well, I guess it was in an article I wrote on for Skeptic Magazine. What's a geochemist doing saying all this? So somehow I guess I can't know as much as an evolutionary psychologist.
Instead of just,
I admit I don't know as much as an evolutionary. They got PhDs in the field. So
right.
No, but boy, in this one area, I'm pretty good.
So for our listeners here on the show who value individual freedom and questioning mainstream narratives, how do you see your paper contributing to pushing back against what you describe as ideological driven scholarship that stifles empirical debate?
Well, that's why I've written this paper. That's why I'm coming on these podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Ideology is not the way to proceed in an academic environment. And I feel like I'm trying to protect our students who are getting pummeled by a lot of nonsense. And so I'm speaking up, and hopefully it'll encourage others to speak up.
Right. So looking ahead, do you plan to expand this work perhaps with more papers, a book, or public discussions? And if so, what advice would you give to aspiring scientists interested in crossing disciplinary boundaries to tackle controversial social issues?
Well, I work with a lot of scientists that have crossed many boundaries. They got into one field and then switched to another. It's not all that unusual as you might think. But I would certainly encourage anyone that's interested in a field not to stay out of that field, to go into it if they're willing to put the time into learning that field.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would encourage anyone. I don't know if I caught the question exactly, but that's what I would recommend.
Yeah,
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Do you plan on doing any more papers or books?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have an agent, and he tells me whether something's of interest or not, and I assume he knows better than I do. So if he tells me that this is a go for a book, I'll continue writing. And I started out to write it a few years ago, and then got off on papers and never got back to the book. But
right.
Yeah, I would.
What about public discussions? Any future things that you're thinking of, or?
Well, when people say they want me to come on their podcast, I jump on it like you have, and I appreciate you having me, by the way. I didn't thank you before. But yeah, I'm very interested in continuing that. I have several more podcasts set up that I'm going on, and I'm hoping that talking to people about this will kind of get the message out there. People want to go and read my paper, they can, but a lot of people kind of, because it's in a research journal, might be intimidated by the language. It's nothing scary. It's just that it's the language that you have to learn before you can sometimes catch on to what's being said. Not always, but sometimes. I don't think it's that ominous in my paper, but
well, I have to be honest. When we first started talking last week, I was kind of like, geez, I don't know. This guy might be way out of my league. So I was like, well,
no, not true.
Let me set it up for next week. That'll give me a week to do some sort of research, so I don't look like a moron.
I appreciate you
here.
trying. No, I appreciate you trying. You probably didn't need to do anything.
Well, I always like to be somewhat prepared, because most of what I talk about are more political and governmental type situations. So I felt like this was a way to branch on the outside of that, but feeling like what you had to say was still topical in a today's type issues, even in politics or everyday situations, that I feel like over the past, I don't know, 8-10 years, we as a society have been dealing with these types of issues, not just as far as dealing with feminists, but even just diversity type language, whether it's race, females, religion, whatever it is. And as a white guy, you feel like you're being attacked from all sides, from whatever it is. And it's like, look, I don't even care. I'm just doing my job. I'm just living my life. And I feel like something you had said earlier, how this all came about. It's like the mass media aspect of things, where someone gets, not so much on a podcast, platform, but just mainstream media of whatever brand, that get this stuff out there, and it just starts to, matriculate in people's minds, and it just becomes a topic of conversation. And in the meantime, I would say 75% of the average Americans out there don't really give a crap about race, gender, religion, or anything else. They're just trying to live their life.
Lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's the way I am, so.
Yeah, it does get frustrating, because it's constantly like, oh, you're this way because I'm a woman. No, it has nothing to do with that. I don't really care,
I agree.
So, finally, I guess we can close it out here. If there's one key takeaway from your paper that you want our audience to remember about the intersection of evolutionary psychology and feminist studies, what would it be?
Well, I think we're getting a lot of misinformation through the movement, mm-hmm. and the feminist movement. And so I would like to just say that the data doesn't support a lot of the claims that they're making. And as a consequence, I think we as taxpayers should seriously be considering, do we want this to continue? And if we do, then maybe we need to be a little stricter on the data-based evidence, which is, what science does. That's the only thing I think would be the main thing of my paper.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So I pronounced your name Marc Defant. Is that the
perfect?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was like, is it Fant or Font? I'm thinking it's more French, so I'm thinking Defant sounds right. So
believe it or not, it's not French.
Oh, it's not?
Italian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, there you go.
I had a family from Italy. So.
I was close. I was in the neighborhood.
Yeah, you were.
All right. So, are you
thanks
on?
for having me, Don. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah. Are you on social media? Is there any way? How can people reach your work or see what you have?
Thanks for asking. I have a website, marcdefant.com.
Okay.
Marc with a C.
Yeah.
And if you want to get a hold of the paper, you can get it there. Or somebody can email me. My email's on there if they want.
I'll put the website in the show notes, so if anybody is interested, they can do so.
Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of you. Well, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Sure.
And
stay in touch.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Stay in touch.
All right.
And
Well,
if when you write your next paper, if you want to come on, you have the email. You said you're not on social media, right? So we can't follow you on Twitter or anything.
I made a mistake of going on there. I was on there for a while, and I found myself getting so upset that I got off. It's crazy out there, it seems like. And I was always afraid I was going to say something that I'd regret, so I got off.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of social media personally. I have it because of the show, and I've already been kicked off of Twitter and Facebook. This was 5 years ago, but I'm back on. But the only reason I keep it open is because of the show mainly.
Yeah, because of your podcast.
Yeah, so I can but I'm shadow banned everywhere. It's very difficult to
I hear you.
get the word out, and I really don't sink any money into this other than what I have to sink into it is so I don't publicize the show. It just kind of it's word of mouth type thing. So
well, I have to thank you sincerely for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for you today. I wanted to thank Professor Marc Defant for being on the show. Like he said, I'll put his website in the show notes. It's marcdefant.com, Mark with a C. If you guys are interested in any more of his works, I encourage you to go to his website and check it out. I also encourage you, if you like this show, to please make sure you share this with your friends, share this on your social media profiles, and make sure you follow the show on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. And please leave a comment, leave a review, and every little bit helps the show out. If you want to follow the show on social media, Don't Tread on America on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, on the Ticker Talker, and of course on the Twitter X machine, DTOM Podcast 1776. And if you're not on social media, that's fine. As you heard, I'm not a big proponent of it, but it is what it is. Go to the website, DontTreadonMerica.com. And if you have any comments on this show or any other show that we've done, you can email me, donq@DontTreadonAmerica.com. That's how these guests are getting on the show, guys. They're emailing me, they're finding me, we're talking, and we're on the show. That's how easy it is. So if you guys have anything that you want to say, you want to be on the show, and it's valuable, please email me. Other than that, guys, you have a great day. This will come out on Friday after Thanksgiving. So, with that being said, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Talk to y'all later. See ya.